What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a Muslim's video that claims to provide proof of signs from God. He claims that these signs are all around us, that point towards the existence of his particular God. Well, I do want to start out by kind of analyzing what it means for something to be a sign from God, because there's a couple of ways that you could think of these signs from God. One of these types of signs from God would be some kind of direction being given to your life. Like maybe you're struggling with some kind of personal thing, and then all of a sudden a special commercial pops up that's always popped up in the past, but now it's so very important because it points you in the right direction that supposedly God wants you to go in. That's one kind of sign from God. Another type of sign from God, the type of sign from God that we're going to be looking at today, are the numerous supposed signs from God that he even exists. And I think that a sign from God would be some kind of message from God saying that he exists in some kind of way. It doesn't have to be verbal or written or anything like that. It would just have to be some kind of instance that could have only happened, or specifically only happened because God made it happen. That is the only way that I could see some kind of sign, some kind of physical object, or some kind of event happening could be directly tied to God. And so that's what we're looking for in this video. All right, Imran Hussein, I'm ready for your signs of God.
Could there ever be an atheist on a sinking ship?
So you're starting off your video with a real dipshit question here. Obviously, there can be atheists on sinking ships. I mean, I don't know one personally, but there's nothing that precludes atheists from being on a sinking ship. So I'm not exactly sure where you're trying to lead us to with this question, but it'll be interesting to see how you get to the point.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers, sisters, friends, and everybody else watching. Welcome to Thought Revolution. In this video, we're going to be looking at the 31st chapter of the Quran, verse 32. But before we do this...
Wait, you're just mentioning it without even reading it? Let's actually read the verse he's talking about in the Quran real quick. So the verse in the Quran, 31:32, says, "And when waves come over them like canopies, they supplicate Allah, sincere to him in religion," i.e. faith. "But when he delivers them to the land, there are some of them who are moderate in faith. And none rejects our signs except everyone treacherous and ungrateful." So what I see out of this particular verse in the Quran is that it's saying that, oh, Allah will save you from these treacherous seas and all of these dangerous situations. But once Allah does this, people become either lackadaisical in their faith, or they just give up faith. They don't even recognize that Allah did it later or something like that. But the ones that totally ignore these quote-unquote signs are ungrateful and treacherous. So this screams to me poisoning the well fallacy. Basically, those that don't think that these are signs from God or signs from Allah in this instance, we're just ungrateful and treacherous? That poisons the well of people that are not convinced by those quote-unquote signs. And you're just setting up whoever you're talking to think about people that don't accept those signs as being these shitty fucking people.
Before we talk about atheists on sinking ships, I want to speak about something related to this, which is very powerful and important. And that is to do with knowledge, truth, certainty. How do we arrive at these things? See, we live in a world where atheists, generally people, promote this idea that science is the only way to truth, that, we need logical, rational argumentation to believe in something, accept something, to be certain of something. All of these paradigms are out there.
Yeah, I feel like being rational about the conclusions that you come to is a good thing. I don't know why you would want to believe something that's not rational if you choose to just disregard anybody that's attempting to be rational about something. I feel like what you're trying to do here is you're trying to suggest that faith is irrational. And for us to disregard the irrational is a bad thing. I feel like saying that something's irrational and therefore you should not believe the conclusion because it is irrational is a good way to come to whatever truth you might find in this reality. And I do agree that science is a method. Science is a paradigm that allows us to describe the reality that we exist in, that we experience. And so if anything does exist in reality, then science is going to be able to explain it. It's just this very first part here just seems so weird to me for somebody to be like, we don't need fucking rationality in order to know things. Do you really want to just believe in rational shit? Come on!
But the question is, why are these the only methods? Why are they the best methods to truth? Take science, for example. The idea of scientism, that science is the only way to truth, collapses because one, science can't give you absolute truth. It's based on induction. And two, science can only tell you about physical things. It can only observe physical things, study physical things.
Yeah, because the physical world is all that we really know to exist. I mean, I get that you're kind of leading us in the direction of like abstract thought and everything, but those are things that still exist within this reality and are products of this physical world. So for you to say that science can only describe reality, it's like, well, yeah, that's exactly what science was made to do, describe reality. Nobody would say that science leads you to the absolute truth of things. Science can do its best to describe what is true about reality, but it never goes that extra step and says that this is absolutely true about reality. Science always leaves a margin of error. Like there's always a little bit that is left there for the possibility that whatever scientific principle, concept, theory, whatever, could be wrong. And that's happened multiple times in the past. Science has been wrong about it. But that's because it's a human invention. It's a human way for us to understand the reality that we're presented with. So obviously it's going to be flawed on occasion because we don't know everything.
Therefore, that's why we say science is amoral. It can't tell you about moral truths, for example, right? So science isn't the only way to truth.
Well, yeah, science should definitely be amoral. I don't think that you should necessarily strictly only use science in order to come into your own moral foundation. I think that we could possibly use science in order to objectively assess whether or not some action was morally good, bad, or neutral, but I don't think that science should direct you in your moral foundation. But there's also no moral absolutes or moral truths. If there were moral truths out there, like absolute moral truths, then things wouldn't have changed over time. We would have eventually found, some kind of absolute moral truth, right? As we've seen with all the moral foundations that have ever existed throughout different societies and different times and places here on earth, these moral foundations change given those societies. So I don't think that an absolute moral code exists or an absolute moral foundation exists. So this is all to say that yes, science should be amoral, but I don't think that that's a bad thing for science. Like, science still describes things in our reality. We can still use science to describe how societies interact or why a society survives and thrives. And so, I mean, we can use science to analyze all these other things, but to try to apply science to these very subjective things like morality, I think is misusing the tool.